What is up guys, Andy Forrest, Team Runner here, and today we're going to be talking all about the good, the bad and the ugly of this sub 240 marathon training series. So welcome back to another video, and today, as I said, we are taking a deeper dive into the good, the bad and the ugly of this sub 240 marathon training series. And that can only mean one thing, that we are right in the final week of training. Yes, 18 weeks complete, 1 week to go, 19 in total, and it is race week. It's better than fight week, it's better than the hype around Jake Paul versus Ben Askren, and fingers crossed I shouldn't get knocked out in the first round, or I shouldn't get chucked off the road after the first mile. But either way, that aside, we're getting ready boys and girls, and what I want to do today is sit back and go through with you guys some of the positives, the negatives and the real tough parts of this marathon training. Thankfully there's a heck of a lot more positives than there is negatives, but the reality is marathon training is up and down, and I want to share with you what those have been for me over these past 18 weeks. So if you're excited for today's video guys, make sure you give it a like, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel for weekly running content, and we'll start with the good. So I've got a lot of good things that I want to share with you, sort of positives that have really come from this last 18 weeks and 19 weeks in total, that I feel like it's really important for me to share with you. Now, as I've mentioned, I've been knocking out these weekly training vlogs now for 18 weeks, and for me it's mashing day after day after day together into one big training vlog and delivering that to you guys week in, week out, so I can share with you the ups and the downs of this training. But for me, over the last 48 hours, after speaking to Chris, he said it'd be a great idea to do a good and bad and ugly video, which I think is a fantastic idea. It's allowed me to sit down and go through all of the videos. I haven't watched them all, but kind of just going through the thumbnails, descriptions, reminding myself of what happened week in, week out, and also taking some mental notes as I've been running and all the things that have helped me get through these 18 weeks. So let's rattle through this list because it's a long one for the good. So the first thing I want to share with you is consistency, how consistent we've been over these last 18 weeks. We have in total ran 871 miles or 1,403 kilometers, averaging 48.43 miles a week or 77.95 kilometers a week. So it's been a relatively lower than normal mileage for me, but I've managed to string week after week after week together, which is great. So normally I sit between the 50 to 55, sometimes 60 mile weeks. This on average has taken me a little bit back, but the consistency of every week of training, just each week being able to knock things out of the park, very happy with workouts, all of that sort of stuff has enabled me to realistically get into the fitness of my life, like the shape I feel right now, regardless of what happens on the weekend. I feel incredible. Marathons, you just can't predict them. You have no idea what's going to happen, but I know the shape I'm in, and I really put this down to the consistent week in, week out training. So I'm very, very grateful that I've been able to do that. Leading on from that, of course, is staying injury-free. Been extremely grateful to stay injury-free, and that's down to a couple of things. Obviously, I've been very hot on my recovery, but also not pushing the mileage has helped. So obviously, when you start to increase mileage, there's obviously that injury risk, but that injury risk is eliminated if you keep the intensity down. So obviously, you're dabbling in new territory, you're testing out new waters. You want to keep it as risk-free as possible. So you don't want to increase that intensity along with volume at the same time. You kind of want to either increase intensity or volume, and then once you've done one, then you do the other one. It's just about treading carefully. But because I haven't done either of those things, I've just kept the same routine and kept a very similar structure in terms of 2 workouts a week in a long run. Again, there's been nothing new there to really push my body to the point where it's felt like it's going to break or anything like that. It's all been within my means, which I'm very, very grateful for. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is more about training smart than anything else. I've really loved the Canova workouts. We've done a great Canova block throughout this training series. A lot of you guys have commented on my Strava and said, oh, I'd love to try that workout, I'd love to try that one. And trust me, they're fantastic fun if you get them right. But the one thing I would stress to everyone is that we've worked our way from week 1 from 8 by 2k all the way up to that massive 765 wasn't it 7 sorry 654 321k workout, and that's been a progression through the weeks. Now you won't really see much benefit from doing the odd Canova workout here and there, but if you string them together as he would do for his athletes, then you get this incredible benefit that for me has just instilled so much confidence into me, because it's all around working around that marathon pace area, doing specific distances at marathon pace and then floating at your moderate pace and so on and so forth. It's been fantastic. I've really enjoyed the Canova workouts. They've been a highlight, unlike the interval workouts. Time trials is another thing that I've really enjoyed. Doing all the time trials has been great fun. The time trials for me were a way to lay down a marker and see where my fitness was at. Again, it was just to keep things fresh and interesting throughout lockdown. Basically the group of us, Team Birdman, Chris's clients, we all did time trials throughout this block. It's been great fun, and I've really enjoyed those. Watching the heart rate come down. I'm not a heart rate fan. If you've come into this series halfway through and found my channel, you won't know that I'm a massive data hater. I'm gonna coin that phrase. I'm a data hater. I just love to run by feel. I love to run sort of by my own, you know, how my body's feeling, how my body's telling me. That's how I've always run. With this training block, I've managed to get myself a heart rate strap that goes around my arm, the Polar OH1. That's more for Chris's benefit, so he can keep an eye on the heart rate. But actually, it's been fascinating to watch over the weeks my heart rate come down to the point where I was doing that 1 hour test at 160 beats a minute and the pace came down over 20 seconds a mile, which is insane. So that's been fantastic. The shoes, the Brooks Hyperion Tempo, the Nike Vomero 15s, and no, they're the Brooks, and the Mach 4. Those 3 shoes have been an absolute cornerstone of this journey. I know that sounds really stupid, but if you've been following the channel before this training series, you'll know I review a load of shoes. And to be honest with you, those 3 shoes are the reason why I've ended up not reviewing as many shoes as I normally would. When marathon training is going well and you're in a really good groove, you really don't want to sort of start to introduce things that could jeopardize things. That's my opinion anyway. And I've wanted to keep things as simplistic as possible. I found those shoes that have worked for me. I've stuck with them and they have consumed the majority of my marathon miles. Obviously, we've used other shoes in and around and we have done some shoe testing, but I really found those 3 shoes. The Brooks Hyperion Tempo for the speed stuff, which now have 330 miles in them, and then the Mach 4 for the second half of the block for the easy and moderate, and the Vomero 15 for the first half, easy and moderate. So sharing the miles between those 2 shoes has been incredible. And finally, the mentality, keep the ball rolling. I've really enjoyed that motto, that saying, that week in, week out, I've been able to approach a workout, and when I've maybe felt really good, I've had to rein it back because I'm thinking, nope, you've got to keep the ball rolling. You want to keep fresh for the next workout. You want to do the job, nothing more, and move on to the next. And when you're feeling bad, all that means is literally just get it done, but don't push yourself too hard to allow yourself to pick yourself up and go again on the next workout. And that mentality has allowed me once again to string all these workouts back to back, these weeks back to back, to get to the point now where I'm feeling really good and really fresh in the taper. So I think I've covered everything, but those are the highlights for me in the good. But as always, not everything goes to plan. Not everything is rosy, and sometimes things just go plain wrong. Let me share with some of the things that I felt haven't gone wrong, have played on my mind, frustrated me throughout this block. There's not many, to be fair, but we'll go through them. I really have had to drill down and pinpoint some workouts specifically for this, because I really have felt like this training block has gone well. But if we're going to be picky, then there's a couple of workouts that have really frustrated me throughout this block. The first one was way back, I think towards the beginning. It was like a negative progression run. So it was basically you're getting slower. You start off, it was a 7 miler, first mile at 5:30 per mile. Then you do 2 miles at 5:50 per mile, and then you do 4 miles at 6:10 per mile. And the goal for that is to generate fatigue and then learn to run around that marathon pace for those last 4 miles with massive fatigue. And I tell you what, it was absolutely horrific. And what went wrong at the time was I actually had my watch on average pace rather than lap pace. So what I did is I clocked to 5:31, absolutely blowing out of my backside, feeling like that was horrific. Had to drop to the 5:50s, really slowed down, checking the average pace on my watch. It got down to 5:50, but then I realised I was looking at average pace and not lap pace. So when I realised that about halfway through that second mile, I flipped it to lap pace and I was running like 6:10 per mile because I thought this isn't 5:50, this is too slow. So then I was playing catch up. So at that point I then clocked a 6:08 and then I clocked a 5:57 because I was all scrambling and it was just horrific. My mind had just completely gone by that point, and then I had to sit and hold 6:10s for 4 miles. Which I did, but it was a massive sufferfest. So I did not enjoy that in the slightest. And that was actually the first workout. Didn't quite go to plan during this marathon training block. And the second one, of course, was that 40k run. It was so close to being perfect, but we just faded at the end. And that I wasn't too disappointed with it. It was more frustration. And that comes down to sort of the carb loading that I did leading up to it, the breakfast I had the morning of. It just wasn't enough to satisfy my body. For those of you who don't know or have come in late to the series, it was a 40k run that was meant to be done in goal time. So this caused a lot of confusion at the time on the training series. Goal time is 2:39 for the marathon. So what are your mile splits to run 40k in 2 hours 39? Well, it's 6:24 per mile. So my goal marathon pace to run 26.2 miles or 42k in 2:39 is 6:06 or 6:05 per mile, around there. But you're just dialing it back, so you're not running at marathon pace. And I think that's where people were thinking, oh my goodness, you're running 40k unfueled at your goal marathon pace. No. It was about 20 seconds slower than goal marathon pace, but it was just about time on feet and teaching your body to switch to your fat systems, burn fat as a fuel basically. And I just didn't fuel up enough the night before and the morning of. I had such a small bowl of porridge, it just didn't cut the mustard, and we faded at mile 23, and in terms of miles, 40k is 24.85 or something like that. So I was about 1.8 miles short, which is a bit frustrating, but either way, it was just another workout that we didn't quite complete. Other than that, there are only other two things that I can think of. Week 13 was quite a difficult week personally for me. Lots of things going on outside of running, massive work, issues going on, frustrations, tiredness, baby not sleeping because he was poorly, he had his injections and he was just not sleeping. And that was a really tough week. That was the pinnacle for me of toughness during marathon training, but thankfully it just lasted a week. And the other one was early starts. I know it's just such a negligible thing, but early starts have been tough. Getting up between 5 and 5:30 to get out the door for 6, sometimes getting up at 4 something to get out the door at 5:30 to get a lot of these workouts done before the school run. It's not easy getting up super early. Obviously when you're working, you've got kids and everything, you need as much sleep as possible. So there's been a lot of these workouts where I've been running on fumes. I don't eat breakfast before any of these workouts, so I do realistically get to the end of all of them and feel absolutely drained. But really, I'm starting to pick holes. That's about it for the bad. And then we shift on to the ugly. And there's only one thing that I can think of when I think of this category, but it sprung to mind straight away for me. And if you tuned in later into this training series, again, this will mean absolutely nothing to you. But in the very beginning, I had an accident with my middle finger. So if you go back and watch week 1, 2, 3 episodes, you'll see that I'm running with a hand cast on. What actually happened was that I severed the tendon in my middle finger, and I had an operation end of November, I think it was, and then we started training middle of January. Now, around that time, I had to take things relatively easy, and things were a little bit hard to get into the marathon training block. That with Christmas then as well, this thing really didn't settle down until mid-January. So the first few weeks, despite working hard and doing my best, it was a very worrying time because I was obviously trying to be very cautious with the weather and the snow, not to slip and hurt my hand. It was also quite painful. It didn't cause any issues at the time, but in general daily life and trying to run with it as well, I would run and it would throb and it would hurt. So what happened was I actually had surgery, as I said, to reattach the tendon in my middle finger. So they had to sort of cut the skin there. You can see a very faint scar. Whether the camera will pick it up, I don't know. They had to peel the skin back and pull the tendon, which had snapped off, ping down here, pull it back up through and reattach it here. Now, as you can see, the finger is not really healed that well. I mean, it's okay, don't get me wrong, it's relatively straight, but it's still also at the same time a lot less flexible than all of the others. And the reality is it's not going to ever really get back to the way it was. This is pretty much how it's going to stay now. If I try and grip this finger, it doesn't quite grip. I struggle to hold things at the moment. It was a rather horrific experience at the time, and mentally it really did throw me. So as much as running was a great distraction from what was going on, I also had to be very, very careful when I was running, especially in those first 2 or 3 weeks, getting those workouts done when it was icy, when it was snowy, on those dark mornings with that cast on, because if I'd have landed on that hand and bent my hand back, I was told by the surgeon in no uncertain terms, that tendon will snap. He was very happy for me to run. He just said, be careful, the cast will do a good job, but it won't prevent it if you literally land full body weight and bend your arm up, and literally the cast will snap and your hand will go with it, and that will be the tendon. Trying to reattach an already attached tendon, he said, the tendon just goes to spaghetti and it's an absolute nightmare. So it was a little bit worrying, but to be honest with you, that was the only thing. So there we go, that's my good, bad and ugly of this sub 240 marathon training block. A lot of reflection that's gone on over the last weekend. Reflection will continue this week as I try and keep my mind off things, but also trying to appreciate and kind of reaffirm things to myself that I've done the training, I'm ready for the race, all of that sort of stuff. I think it's important that we do that to ourselves. It keeps the nerves at a minimal level, but I'm excited, I'm super excited, and I was excited to share this today. I'd love to know from you guys what your thoughts are in terms of good and bad and ugly. What happens to marathon training for you? Have there been any highlights for you in the good? Have there been any highlights that went really wrong in a recent training block? And of course the ugly. I'd love to hear, share experiences and get that conversation going. I appreciate all your support once again on this training series, guys. We're nearly there. The race is this Sunday. Thank you so much. If you enjoyed today's video, guys, make sure you give it a like, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel for weekly running content, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then.